may I now introduce my friend Stephen. Stephen Towler has been a Buddhist for over 50 years and is a Dhamma Group facilitator at the Cambodian Buddhist Society in Kelmscott. Stephen spent 7 reigns as a monk in the Thai forest tradition, learning from teachers including Acharn Fun, Ajahn Baen, Luang Poo Tate. Stephen has skillfully translated texts from teachers such as Luang Poo Tate, Luang Poo Maha Boowa, and Ajahn Piak from Thai to English. So may I invite Stephen to lead the guided meditation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Okay. So, find a comfortable position. Because while we practice meditation to train the mind, it's always useful to start at least in a comfortable position. Even if we get little niggles as we sit or walk or however, whichever posture we choose to practice. Because if the body is calm and relaxed, then the mind doesn't have to worry about it so much. And then the mind can start to focus on the meditation subject, instead of being involved in little pains here and little feelings there. So it's important to start off correctly. So take a few deep breaths. And if you practice meditation regularly, then just ignore my voice and just practice your normal meditation subject. Focus your attention on that subject to the exclusion of all else. If you haven't practiced much, or you're not having so much success, then I'll do a guided practice. And then simply follow my instructions. Don't have any expectations that something's going to happen or not happen. Simply allow your mind to focus on the task at hand. So in the first case, I want you to keep your eyes closed, feel comfortable, feel yourself in the posture that you're in. If you're sitting, then feel yourself sitting on the chair or on the floor. Lying, if you're lying down, just feel yourself in that posture. Now, with your eyes closed, I want you to focus your attention as if your eyes were open and looking at a spot just in front of your nose, or just between your nose and your upper lip. So look at that spot as if your eyes were open, and just focus on it. Nothing else, just in front of the nose or in front of the upper lip. stare at that spot. Now, while you're still staring at that spot as if your eyes were open, I want you to feel the breath. Wherever you feel it, wherever you feel the touch of the breath coming in and going out. Coming in and going out. Wherever you feel that touch, just focus your attention there. While you're still trying to gaze at that spot just in front of the nose. Try and feel the breath coming in, going out. Coming in, going out. If the mind drifts, gaze back at that spot in front of the nose. Start again. Feel the breath coming in and going out. And if the two spots that you're concentrating on, where you're staring at that spot in front of the nose, and the feel of the breath coming in, going out. If they seem to become one, then just focus your attention there. Watch the breath come in, go out. Come in, go out. And if the breath gets really subtle, such that it's difficult to find, then don't go running back trying to find it. Just focus on the empty space that that breath leaves. Just relax into that space. Don't let the mind become distracted. Just focus your attention on that one spot. The stillness will start to develop in your heart. Then just let that stillness take over. Be calm, quiet, relaxed. Now we're coming towards the end of our meditation practice. So just take a moment to make sure your mind is still on your meditation subject. Then open your eyes in your own time. Feel relaxed. And come round in your own time. No rush. No pressure. So, we've just done some meditation practice, and excuse me. On the way up here, I came up with Thomas and Ariel, and I was reflecting on a talk, a Dhamma talk, that my teacher gave back in the 1970s when I was ordained and practicing in Thailand. And he said, well, look, people sit in meditation, they sit with their legs crossed and they close their eyes and the mind's all over the place. He said, they're not really meditating, they're just sitting there. But someone who is moving around, walking around, going about their day-to-day business, but they do so with mindfulness. And they do so focused on one subject. Whether that's the body, feeling the body, seeing the body, but understanding that this body is just elements or just parts. Just focusing and keeping a meditation subject in mind, with mindfulness in the present. He said, that person is meditating. And the difference is mindfulness. For those people who are mindful, no matter what they're doing, then they're able to focus their attention on wholesome dhammas, and they're able to avoid unwholesome dhammas because their mind is in the present. Not in the past, thinking of what they've done, not in the future, thinking about what they're going to do, but simply watching, observing, and understanding the present moment. So, I thought I'd just share that with you, because that's not what I'm going to talk about. At least not yet, anyway. So, what shall we talk about? Normally what happens with me is I just make up stuff as I go along. I don't mean that's not something that's not true. It's just that I don't usually prepare anything, and so I just go where the talk takes me. So usually what happens when I give a talk is I just have an introduction. So something takes my attention, and then I just wander off and go all over the place. So if that's what happens tonight, you find me going all over the place, then just give me a bit of slack. So you've come to listen to a Dhamma talk. Practice meditation to listen to a Dhamma talk. You know, the Lord Buddha said there are 5 benefits of listening to a Dhamma talk. The first is that you hear a piece of Dhamma that you've never heard before. So you're listening and you think, oh, that's something new. And that's always useful, because especially when you practice meditation, people give up practicing meditation because they don't find it interesting anymore. They become bored. They don't have enough wisdom to be able to develop new techniques, new ways of looking at things, taking the same meditation subject, twisting it around and looking at it from a different angle. And when that happens, people give up. So if you listen to a Dhamma talk and you hear something new, it's something that can prick your attention, and something where you can say, hang on, I can examine that, I can take that and build on it. So therefore, you're listening to Dhamma, and the Dhamma that you've heard is now of use. It's useful. So it's not just a piece of information that you've had that's passed on to you. It's now something that you can use to develop your own practice. So Dhamma, listening to Dhamma, is always useful. And one of the other benefits is it makes the mind calm. But while that's a benefit, it's also interesting to note that when you listen to Dhamma, you should first try to make your mind calm. That's why it's good to practice meditation before you listen to a Dhamma talk. Because Dhamma is calming. Dhamma quenches the fires of lust, the fires of ill will and aversion, and the fire of delusion, the fire of ignorance. So making your mind calm makes you compatible to listening to Dhamma. When the mind is passionate with ill will, passionate with lust, Dhamma is very difficult to listen to, very difficult for it to sink in, because those emotions overpower the heart, and instead of allowing Dhamma in, you tend to push it out and not take any notice, because you're so fired up with those emotions, those passions. So it's good to make your mind calm in the first instance before you listen to Dhamma, so that when you do listen to Dhamma, your mind and the Dhamma are in sync. And then, even if you don't understand the language, and even if you don't understand every point that's made by the person who's giving the talk, your citta, your heart will. It will understand, because the Dhamma is beyond language. And so it's really important not only to make your mind calm, but then to accept the calmness that the Dhamma brings when you're listening to it. And then the mind becomes even calmer still. So another benefit is that you may actually get a better understanding of some of the things that you already thought you knew. So, for example, you may listen to a talk about the 4 satipatthana, the 4 ways of practicing mindfulness, whether that's mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of thoughts, or mindfulness of various dhammas that you've listened to before. You've listened to people explain them, but now suddenly you're hearing something that's new. So that again is something that can prick your attention, something that can be interesting, because you've got to try and make your meditation interesting, because if it's not interesting, you will lose attention and you'll become bored. So again, listening to Dhamma can assist in that way. So when you come along to a Friday night, or wherever you get the opportunity to listen to Dhamma, then it's not a waste. Even if you hear something that you've heard many times before, it's still worthwhile, because Dhamma is really, really precious. I once went to someone's house, and we used to get together regularly and have, once a month, we talk Dhamma. And they invited someone along for the first time, a sort of acquaintance of theirs, who had no understanding of Buddhism at all. And so I had to try and make the talks or the discussion at a fairly basic level, so that the new person would understand what we're talking about. You should start with Four Noble Truths, etc. And then after that person, the new person, had come along for about 3 months, and we were still talking basic stuff. After that person had left, one of the hosts of the meeting said to me, "Oh, I'm so bored because you keep talking about the same basic stuff, keep talking about the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. I'm over it, I've heard it so many times. I felt like getting up and making myself a cup of coffee." And I thought at the time, I didn't say it, but I thought at the time, if you really understood the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, you'd be enlightened. So to say you're fed up with listening to it is like you're fed up of listening to Dhamma. Because it doesn't matter how many times you listen to the basic stuff, you don't understand it. It's an intellectual understanding. It's not understanding the truth that underpins the words that are being said when you listen to a Dhamma talk. And so, yes, you can hear things many times over, and that's why I said you've got to be careful to try and make things interesting. You have to find new ways of looking at the same subject matter. So it doesn't matter how many times you go over it and over it and over it until it actually sinks in, then it's not really understanding the Dhamma. It's only understanding it at an intellectual level. So the other thing, or another benefit of listening to Dhamma, is you can have some of your wrong views or wrong thoughts corrected. So you hear something that you thought you understood, and then you can examine what the speaker was talking about and say, "Oh, well, maybe I didn't quite understand that correctly, or maybe I have the wrong view on that." And so listening to Dhamma can help correct those wrong views and put you on the right path. Because meeting with people who are like-minded, meeting with people who only talk Dhamma, or not only, but mostly talk Dhamma, or listening to a Dhamma talk, is associating with the right sort of people. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to anybody else, but what it means is they're people who will encourage you. They will encourage you to practice. Because in normal life, you come across people who will always be negative. You come across situations which you find difficult because that's just the way lay life is. And so communing with people who are like-minded and listening to the Dhamma can help energize you and re-energize you. Associating with the wise is one of the great meritorious deeds that one can do. And so those 5, you can find something out that's new, you can have an improved view of things that you already know, you can have wrong views corrected, and you can make your mind calm and peaceful. These are all benefits of the Dhamma, of listening to the Dhamma. But the Dhamma has evolved, what we call Dhamma. At the time of the Lord Buddha, when he was practicing, when he still wasn't enlightened, There were no Dhamma books. He couldn't read about the Dhamma because there was no notion of Buddhism, no notion of Dhamma when he set out to practice. So what did he do? Well, he by inference thought that there must be something else to life, even though he grew up in an environment which was very pleasant, shall we say, as far as sensual pleasures were concerned. He obviously realised that there was more to life than that, but it didn't become apparent to him until such time as he went outside the palace gates. Because his parents, the king and queen, purposely designed his life so that he would never see suffering. But on his first visit outside the palace gates, he saw what aging was like. He saw what it was like to be ill, to be sick. He saw what it was like to die. And he saw what gave him a hint that perhaps there was something more to life. He saw an ascetic who was practicing. And he thought, I'm going to try and find out what all this is about. So there was no written Dhamma, there was no spoken Dhamma, but Dhamma still existed, because Dhamma doesn't just mean the written word. Dhamma isn't something that is in books. Words are in books. Dhamma is in here. Dhamma is in your mind and body. Everybody is born with Dhamma. You have Rupa Dhamma, which is the form, your body. You have Nama Dhamma, which is your mind. These are your teachers. And that's what he did. He spent 5 years studying and trying to find the answer to the questions of what causes old age, sickness and death. And in so doing, he came to the realization that the answers were within, not without. And he turned his attention to try and understanding the body and understanding how the mind works. And in so doing, he came to see that the causes of those suffering were greed, hatred, ignorance, wanting, desire, attachment, all these defilements, all these unwholesome things. And he learnt that by examining his own Dhamma, his own body, his own mind. He came to realize that within this body there is no self. We have no dominion over the elements that make up this body. When we're born, we don't get to choose which elements of oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen come to form our body. We don't get to pick. When we're born, we get what we're given. And as we progress through life, we take what we're given. Our body is made up of the air that we breathe, the food that we take in, the water, and it's just one big chemical reaction. And he came to realize that we have no dominion over that. These things happen, our bodily functions happen automatically in many cases. We have little control. Yes, I can move my arm. Yes, I can speak. But if I don't eat, my body will die. If I don't drink, my body will die. If I don't breathe, my body will die. I can't make my body do certain things. I can't make the blood flow in the opposite direction. I can't stop my body from aging. I can't stop my hair from falling out. I can't stop my body from being sick. I can't stop my body from dying. I have no dominion over my body. But everybody thinks they do, because they don't understand the Dhamma. They see a body. They see hair of the head, nails, teeth, skin, and they see, this is my body. But really we have no dominion over the body. So we think, well, I have dominion over my mind. This is me. But actually, even that's not true. Feelings arise based on what we experience. Those feelings are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. They arise because of what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, what we touch. And we like certain things and we don't like others. And when we like things, we want them to continue. We want them to last. But they don't last. They're impermanent. Things that we don't like, we want them to disappear. But we can't always make things that we don't like disappear. For example, if the body's really sick, we can't always make that pain go away, even with the best of medicines. So we experience more suffering. This is the Dhamma that is the real Dhamma. And it's here within our own mind and body. But we just can't see it. And even though we pile on suffering on ourselves, we get stressed about work, we get stressed about the family, we get all sorts of physical pain, and we get all sorts of stress. And even though we might pile that on ourselves, or other people get involved, and we just get attached to things that we shouldn't be attached to, we make mountains out of molehills, and life becomes difficult. Even though all of that can happen to us, we still don't see the underlying Dhamma. Because that's our teacher. The suffering that we experience in the world should tell us why we need to understand Dhamma. Because if we want to be free from that suffering, then we need to understand what its cause is. We can't just block it out or hope that it goes away. Because it doesn't. Because as Lord Buddha said, when Sariputta became a Sotapanna, Sariputta was the Lord Buddha's right-hand man, his left-hand man was Moggallana. When they were still lay people, Sariputta saw a monk, a new monk who'd only just been ordained, and he thought, oh, that's a holy man, and I'm in search of answers to the riddles of life. I'll go and ask him what his master teaches. So Sariputta went along and he said, excuse me, but what does your teacher teach? And the monk said, oh, well, I'm a junior monk and I really don't know everything that my master teaches, and I'm just sort of learning myself. But what he does teach is that all things that arise through causes and conditions. And he also teaches about the cessation, about the closing off of those causes and conditions. That's what he teaches. And Sariputta, on hearing those basic words, became a Sotapanna, a stream enterer, an Arya, someone who's put their feet on the path to enlightenment, cannot slip backwards, will only develop spiritually and go forward to become enlightened. And so he thought he'd go and tell the same story to his friend Moggallana. And he told exactly the same story that the Lord Buddha taught about causes. Things arise because of causes, and if you terminate the causes, then the effects will cease. And Moggallana became a Sotapanna, became a stream enterer, simply on listening to those words. When Lord Buddha first proclaimed the Dhamma, he proclaimed it to the 5 ascetics that used to follow him and practice with him. And they'd given up on him, thought that because he'd taken some food, that he wasn't practicing the ascetic life anymore, that he wasn't worth following. So they gave up on him. And when he became enlightened, he sought them out. And he went to teach them. And he taught the first 2 suttas, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta and the Anattalakkhana Sutta, the first 2 discourses of the Buddha. And after they'd listened to the Dhamma, they'd listened to what he had to say, all 5 became enlightened. All 5. And there are a number of stories through the suttas and through the commentaries which are very similar, that where listening to the Dhamma causes people to become enlightened, or to become stream enterers, or to become Aryas of one kind or another. So again, the importance of listening to Dhamma. You can become enlightened simply by listening to Dhamma. These days, I haven't heard of anyone who's actually become enlightened simply because they've listened to somebody talk and give a Dhamma talk. And why? Because these days our barami, our perfections, are not as strong as what they were back then. Back in the time of the Lord Buddha, there were hundreds, thousands of enlightened beings, thousands of them. You could find a teacher. In northern India, it was easy to find a teacher, someone who knew how to practice Dhamma. These days, it's very difficult. So that's another example of how to learn Dhamma. Acharn Tate used to say, we're all born with the manual, we're all born with a manual of Dhamma. It's just that we can't read it because it's in a language we don't understand. The way that we live in the world, the way that shapes us, is a conventional world. When we're born, you're told your name is this, your name is John, your name is Mary, I'm your mother, I'm your father. It's the conventional world, and you get conditioned from the moment that you're born. But the world of Dhamma is the world which understands that nature, that is the world of supposition. It's not the real world. The real world is that this body is devoid of self. It's just elements that come together for a while. Or it's parts. It's hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, heart, lungs. All sorts of parts that just comprise the body. It's not something which there is an I. You can't find a me or a mine. Even within the brain. The brain is simply the exchange between the physical world and the mental world. The mind itself isn't the brain. There's no self in any of it. There's only elements. There's only components. And those components rely on causes. You eat, you drink. The body comes together and food digests. It passes around in the blood. It makes the body. When those causes break down, you become sick or you age. And then eventually you die. You can't stop it. So cause and effect is the core of Dhamma. Understanding that whatever arises must pass away. That wherever has causes, whatever has conditions that make it arise, that is suffering. That's the basis of the Four Noble Truths. So you see that through examining the body. You see that through examining the mind, watching feelings arise and pass away, and seeing that feelings drive wanting, craving, desire. Desire causes attachment. Attachment is just us holding on to a hot coal that's burning us. That's the suffering. But if we hold on to a hot coal and that's burning our skin, we can drop it. But the fires that burn the passions within our heart, the passion of ill will, the passion of lust, the passion of greed, envy, hatred, those passions we don't see the danger of. And in fact, a lot of people think that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be greedy. That's not the view of the Buddha. And the Buddha said, see those as real passions. They are real fires that are burning, and they're worse than the hot coal that you can let go of. Why? Because they cause rebirth. They cause that cycle of birth, old age, suffering, and old age, sickness and death and rebirth. They're the cause. Those unwholesome states of mind. Those fires are far more intense, far more dangerous than any hot coal that you can hold in your hand and let go of. So it's important to understand what the Dhamma means in terms of understanding how your body, how your mind works. Because it's through understanding that wisdom arises, that panya arises. And when panya arises, when wisdom arises, then it can sever those causes. It can sever those conditions which give rise to the very suffering which we all experience day to day. So that's the element of understanding Dhamma from the point of view of looking at the nature of reality, as opposed to just simply reading Dhamma or understanding Dhamma from reading books. You can read as much as you like, but if you don't turn it into practice, it's really no different to studying Dhamma at university, where you can get an A or a B or whatever simply by writing essays and understanding Dhamma, because that's the course that you're studying. But if you really want to practice or really understand Dhamma, really make it personal to you, you have to practice. You have to practice. And to practice, you have to look at your own mind and your own body, because that's where the true Dhamma lies. Not in the books, but in here. And when you do practice, what you see is when you come to read the books, is you get a different interpretation of them. You actually see them, because especially when you read in English, you are subject to the translator's sort of preferences. And sometimes you'll see, you compare two Pali passages that are translated into English and see quite a variation in the translation. And that's because, again, the translator has a certain way of translating, and they understand the Dhamma in one way and someone else understands it in another way. But when you practice and you come to read, some of the contradictions which you find then disappear. And you know exactly what's been said, even though the words might not convey that meaning. So it's really important when you come to understand this core concept of what is the Buddhist religion about. And we all talk about Dhamma. We talk about this is the teachings of the Lord Buddha. Well, that's one meaning of the word Dhamma. The real meaning of the word Dhamma is the understanding the nature of the reality that we live in. That's the real meaning of Dhamma. And to understand that, we have to practice. We can't simply read and get an intellectual understanding and think that that will cause an end to suffering. It won't. So I encourage everybody to practice, to take what you've learnt, to take what you've heard and turn it into practice. Take a meditation subject, practice focusing your attention on that meditation subject, because it's only through doing that that you will become free from suffering. We all want to be free from suffering, and the goal for Buddhism, the goal for Buddhists is just that, to be free from suffering. And we do that through practicing understanding the Four Noble Truths and practicing the 8 factors of the path, because that's the way that Buddhism is understood, and it's the way that we become enlightened, and it's the way that we free ourselves from suffering. So, I've said enough. So, sadhu. So, I'll take questions. That was a bit of a ramble, and probably went somewhere that I wasn't going to go, but I'll take questions on anything, but not who's going to win the football on Sunday. No questions. I couldn't have explained things that well that everybody understood exactly what I was talking about. There must be someone who needs some point of clarification.
More a question of curiosity, which I'm sure you've told this story before, because last year's rains, the theme was turning points. But I want to go back and ask, what was it that was, what sparked the fire in your heart to go on a Buddhist path?
Karma.
Karma. That sounds powerful.
Yeah. When I was 4 years old, my father asked me if I wanted to go to Sunday school. And I said, what's Sunday school? And he said, well, it's basically like ordinary school, except you do it on Sundays. So I thought, oh, okay. So I went along to Sunday school, and it was all this Christian stuff. And when I finished, that one time, my father picked me up, and I looked at him, and he said to me, what did you think? Did you like it? You want to go next week? And I just said, no, I don't like it, and I don't want to go next week. So, by that time, I had no idea of what Buddhism was or even what Christianity was, really. I just knew that whatever was being taught there wasn't for me. And then when I was 16, and I was still interested in trying to find out about various religions, I read about all the major religions, took books out from the library and read about all the major religions. And then I got as far as Buddhism, and it just made sense. It just meant there was just a connection. And as the Lord Buddha said, once you find the Dhamma, you shouldn't go looking for anything else. So I didn't. I just practiced. And as a 16-year-old, I took 5 precepts, and I've kept 5 precepts to now, and I'm 72 next month. So I've kept 5 precepts all that time. So yeah, it's just, I guess, practice that I've done in previous lifetimes.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I was pretty food focused. And the only reason I went to Sunday school was because the ladies made good pumpkin scones. That was the extent of mine. I think for a lot of people, they come to the Dharma from some kind of cataclysm, some traumatic event in their life.
Yeah. And for me, that's not the case. For me, it was just natural. So then from being a Buddhist at 16, practicing, I joined the Buddhist Society in my local county in the UK, and then from there ordained when I was 19 in Thailand, and spent 7.5 years there, and I left largely because of ill health. So it's been a part of my life all that time, and I can't say that there's any one thing that drew me to Buddhism, but I've got to the stage where I've studied with some very good teachers, and I have no doubt. There's no question for me as to whether what the Buddha taught was right or wrong. It's simply not something that I entertain. It is correct, it is right, and it's just the way things are. So Yeah, I guess that's just my good barami.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I'm not going to bite.
Stephen doesn't bite?
Huh?
Good on you.
Oh, hello. Hi there. I've only been here 5 times, and I'm loving it. I'm looking forward to it. And I've read that little basic booklet once on what is Buddhism and watched a couple of YouTube videos. That's all I really know. What I'm sort of wondering is, what's the next step? Where do you go from here? Like, this is the first time I've even learnt what a Dharma talk is. Yeah, like I'm a baby in this, so what is the next step?
Yeah, well, you can continue to come, obviously. It's very nice that you do come. But, as I said, you have to have a basic level of learning. But don't think that you have to study and understand all of the suttas, all of the teachings of the Lord Buddha. You don't. You only have to understand the basics. And the basics are just what I've said. So practice yourself. And sure, do some reading. Sure, talk to people. Go to the monastery. Go to talk to some of the monks. Talk to people here who've been coming a little bit longer. But yeah, just feel comfortable in yourself that it makes sense, that what you're looking at, the things that I've said to you today about not owning your own body, that may be, for someone who's new to Buddhism, that may be something that is difficult to understand. But analyse it. Don't just take my word for it. Don't take the Buddha's word for it. You have to come to that knowledge yourself, for yourself. No one can make you enlightened. So your next step, really, is just watching what's going on within your own body and mind. What is driving your thoughts? What is driving your feelings? Who's watching? Who knows? What are you conscious of? What do you know through your eyes, your ears, your mouth? What is it that's driving those experiences? That's what you've got to concentrate on. But you're not going to do that like today or tomorrow. It's not going to happen. You have to try and develop some mindfulness. But what you really have to do, though, is read, listen, and come to understand a basic knowledge and practice. But associate with people who are like-minded. Try and find friends who will support you rather than try and bring you down, who say, oh, what are you doing that for? Because there are basic things like the 5 precepts. And not everybody likes the 5 precepts. Not everybody likes the fact that we don't kill animals or any beings, that we try not to hurt any beings, that we don't like taking that which is not given. We're not sexually promiscuous. We don't tell lies. We don't indulge in intoxicants. So your next step is, do you actually want to follow those 5 precepts? Because if you're going to have a firm foundation for understanding the things that I've talked about, they're a minimum requirement, because they're basically a set of policies which says that there are certain kinds of bad activity that I'm just not going to do. Because any of those unwholesome acts, killing, stealing, telling lies, and all of those, if you're willing to indulge in them, then they counteract any progress that you make in your meditation. So you need to understand that being a Buddhist means being virtuous to the extent of keeping 5 precepts. And if you're not prepared to do that, then your understanding of Buddhism will only ever be intellectual. If it's going to mean something in here, then it has to mean something that you're prepared to do. And the very minimum is keeping 5 precepts. Is that something that helps, or is that something that makes things more difficult for you?
No, it helps, yeah. I think just, for me, just keep coming and don't try to control the outcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Don't have any expectations. Do you know why? Because expectations are dukkha, suffering. They're painful. Because when people or things don't meet your expectations, you get upset. And generally, expectations are not met. So just do. Just do the best that you can. And commit. And then what you have faith in now, you have wisdom about later. What you believe now, you come to understand. So you take something on face value, that if you practice properly, what I said will happen. You'll become enlightened if you practice properly. And you'll be free from suffering. You'll understand the causes of suffering, and you'll terminate those causes. But you can't do that right now. Same as most people in this room, if not everybody in this room. But if you practice, just keep the precepts, just keep turning up to practice meditation, just do it. Results will come. Westerners in particular, when they practice meditation, they want to know about, this is going to be an experience like this, it's going to be jhana, it's going to be this, that and the other. That's not what you should do. All you have to do is practice, and results will come. When you sit there thinking, oh yes, I'm going to be first jhana today. Let me just think, I think tomorrow I might be enlightened. Your meditation's going nowhere. Because you're trying to set an outcome and you're attached to your own meditation. And you can't be. You have to let go of everything. You have to let go of both good and bad eventually. Wholesome and unwholesome. Let go of everything. It's what you've got to learn to do. Learn to let go. Learn to just see everything from a neutral perspective. That there's no such thing as good and bad. We have to use good and bad, wholesome and unwholesome, as tools to train our mind. So that we move towards the wholesome and we jettison all the unwholesome things that we do. So there's another thing that you can do. Look at yourself, look at your own personality, look at what you do well in terms of things that are wholesome. You're a generous person, you're a friendly person, you're a moral person. They're all good. Keep those kind of practices going. Unwholesome things like, I do get angry when I drive my car sometimes because somebody cuts me off. And so anger arises. Well, I think, I'm going to stop doing that. So again, you're learning to do things because you're now developing positive things and you're jettisoning unwholesome things. So then, again, you'll start to develop. You ask me, what do I do next? That's what you do next. And it's what you do after that, and it's what you do after that. Because that's right effort. Developing good points and jettisoning unwholesome traits that you have and not developing any new ones. So again, something simple, something that you can do. You can sit back at the end of every day and say, how did I go during the day? Give yourself a scorecard. Did I do well? Did I keep my anger under control? Did I keep my greed under control? Was I generous? Was I helpful to someone? Tick. They're things that you can do. And you can start to see what happens when you do that is your mind starts to become calm. Some of the stresses and strains that you had in your life now start to abate. So now you can start to think, this actually works. But don't set too many expectations of yourself. Just simply do. Because eventually then, as I said, even the good things that you have, the good qualities that you have to let go. Good and bad. They're just part of this world. In reality, they don't exist. That's a bit deeper discussion though. Not for beginners.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Has anybody else got any other? Yeah, please.
In different places in the sutras, I've heard of dharmas in the plural.
Yeah.
And how does that fit? I've never been quite clear how that fits with dharma as the singular.
It's just an issue for translation. Excuse me. Dharma's, Dharma in itself is a word which has got several meanings, which is some of the things that I've just been through. But you could say, are you familiar with the 5 hindrances? They are a dharma. The 7 factors of enlightenment, they are a dharma. So when you say there's 2 things there, they are dharmas. So you could say that's multiple different aspects of the Dhamma. But it's also dharmas as in, Dharma also means all conditioned and unconditioned phenomenon. So as opposed to sankhara, which are conditioned phenomenon, Dharma in this sense can mean all conditioned and unconditioned. And so that's sometimes used in the plural there. So all dharmas. So that means everything in this world and everything, and also in the non-conditioned world, which is nibbana. So it's just a catch-all. Again, simply because Dharma has many meanings.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Has anybody else got anything that they want to say? Ask. No? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Shall we... Sorry, is there a question? Okay, let me bring the mic to you.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand why the why the conditioned would be classified as dharma as well.
You see, the Lord Buddha said, "Sabhe sankhara aniccaṃ, sabhe sankhara dukkhaṃ, sabhe dhamma anatta." So what he's saying there is all conditioned phenomena, sankhara, are impermanent. All conditioned phenomena are suffering. All dhamma, all conditioned, both conditioned and unconditioned, are anatta. So there are 2 realities basically. There's the samutta, excuse me. There's the sammuti reality, or the reality of supposition, where it's a normal reality, conventional reality, and there's dharma. Or another way of looking at it, in the Sutta on elements, the Lord Buddha says there are 2 aspects that you can look at. Not only are the 4 elements that we know of: fire, earth, wind, air, and air. Excuse me. And he goes through a whole list of other elements. But ultimately there is sankata dhatu and asankata dhatu. And what they mean is the conditioned world and the unconditioned world. And Dhamma covers both. But sankhara only covers the conditioned world.
Thank you.
Is that?
Yeah, that's much clearer. Yeah, just
good.
sort of, thank you. For me, I mean, you probably said the same thing, but yeah, just I understood it better then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mm.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephen.
Oh, you're welcome.
Shall we give 3 sadhus to say thank you and end the night together? Thank you. Sadhu.
So